Halloween 3 wasn't just another sequel. It was a factory of nightmares, an experiment that nearly destroyed the franchise by replacing Michael Myers with cursed masks and glowing TV screens. But the chaos behind the scenes was even stranger than the story itself. The writer sued to take his name off, the first director walked away, and the special effects team made robots bleed orange juice. These are 10 creepiest facts about Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. And hidden in its reels is a mask toss, so cursed it took more than 40 tries to capture. Number 1. The mask toss from hell. You'd think the hardest moment to capture in Halloween 3 would be one of the death scenes or a big effects sequence, but the real nightmare was much smaller. All Tom Atkins had to do was throw a mask at a security camera and make it stick. Sounds easy, right? But that single toss ended up taking more than 40 tries. Every time he flung the mask, it bounced off the lens, slid down the wall, or landed just short. Director Tommy Lee Wallace admitted he jinxed himself. He had casually tossed a mask at the camera while messing around on set and nailed it on the first try. He knew that shot was too good to be true, and sure enough, when the cameras rolled, fate made him pay for it. The mask toss became infamous among the cast, proving that sometimes the simplest shots can turn into pure cinematic torture. Number 2. Orange juice for blood. The henchmen in Halloween 3 bleed a strange gooey orange liquid when they're injured. At first glance, it looks like some sort of sci-fi concoction. Maybe an alien substance or lab-made chemical. But the truth is way less glamorous and way weirder. That sticky yellow-orange fluid was nothing more than plain orange juice mixed for the camera. The production team needed something cheap, easy to clean, and bright enough to show up under the lights. So the next time you pour yourself a glass of orange juice at breakfast, just remember you're sipping the same blood that spilled from Cochrane's robotic servants. Suddenly, that morning drink doesn't feel so refreshing. Number 3. Multiple endings were filmed. When the cast wrapped Halloween 3, not even Tom Atkins himself knew how the movie would end. That's because the crew filmed several different conclusions, each one darker than the last. One unused version actually featured the horrifying screams of millions of children as the commercial broadcast continued to play. It was so grim that director Tommy Lee Wallace scrapped it, choosing instead to leave the finale ambiguous, a frantic plea to stop the broadcast, followed by silence. Years later, fans asked Atkins if he thought his character succeeded in cutting off the signal. With no hesitation, he grinned and said, "You bet your sweet ass I did." That confidence may have settled the debate for some, but for others, the chilling uncertainty is exactly what makes the ending unforgettable. Number 4. Jamie Lee Curtis was still there. Fans often say Halloween 3 has no trace of the original cast, but that's not entirely true. Jamie Lee Curtis, the face of the first 2 films, sneaks into this one in a way most people miss. She never appears on screen, but her voice is hidden in plain sight. When Dr. Chalice tries to call Santa Mira, the operator's calm voice is hers. She also slips in as the intercom announcer at the Silver Shamrock Factory. It's a blink and you'll miss it cameo, but once you know, it's impossible not to hear Laurie Strode lurking in the background of the movie. Number 5. A lawsuit over violence. The script for Halloween 3 started out under the pen of Nigel Neal, a respected British writer known for cerebral science fiction. But when he saw how the film was shaping up, he wanted nothing to do with it. The gore was too much for his taste, and he didn't like how his story was being twisted into a blood-soaked slasher. So he actually sued the producers to have his name removed from the credits. In the end, only fragments of his ideas survived. John Carpenter had already rewritten large parts of the script, and director Tommy Lee Wallace added his own changes. What remained was a patchwork of different visions. with Neil's name erased, leaving only whispers of what the movie might have been if it had stayed closer to his original concept. Number 6. The franchise almost erased Michael Myers. Imagine a Halloween movie without Michael Myers. For most fans, that's unthinkable, but that was exactly the studio's original plan. After the success of the first 2 films, producers wanted Halloween to become an anthology, each entry a different standalone horror story set on the same holiday. Halloween 3 was the first attempt at that shift, swapping the mask-wearing killer for sinister corporate villains, but audiences weren't ready to let go. Box office numbers dropped, fans revolted, and the experiment ended almost immediately. By the very next film, Michael was resurrected, cementing him as the face of the franchise forever. Halloween 3 became the strange black sheep, a reminder of the one time the studio tried to cut the shape out of his own series. Number 7. The director swap. Halloween 3 could have looked completely different if the original director had stayed on board. The first pick wasn't Tommy Lee Wallace, it was Joe Dante, the filmmaker who would go on to make Gremlins and The Howling. Dante was drawn to the strange mix of horror and satire in the script, but he left the project to pursue other opportunities. That's when Wallace, who had edited the original Halloween, stepped in. His style shaped the final movie, leaning into paranoia and eerie jingles instead of Dante's signature dark comedy. It's one of those what-ifs of horror history. How different would Season of the Witch feel if the man who unleashed gremlins on the world had been behind the camera? Number 8. The red-headed army that never was. Conal Cochran's army of android henchmen could have looked a lot stranger. Early drafts of the film called for every single one of them to be red-headed. A whole army of ginger assassins in suits. The idea was eventually scrapped, probably because it would have given away the game too quickly. An endless row of identical redheads would have made it obvious that something unnatural was going on. Still, it's funny to imagine Tom Atkins storming into Santa Mira only to find an entire factory town filled with carrot-topped robots staring back at him. Number 9. Real masks you could buy. The silver shamrock masks weren't just props on screen. When the movie hit theaters, the pumpkin skull and witch masks were actually sold in stores as official merchandise. Even better, they were cast from the very same molds used in the film. That meant you could walk into a shop in 1982 and wear the exact same design kids wore before their grisly fate. Horror fans today would kill to get their hands on those originals. Instead, most of what's left are cheap replicas that never quite capture the eerie simplicity of the movie versions. Number 10. Hidden connections to the first 2 films. Even though Michael Myers doesn't stalk the streets in Halloween 3, the movie is still littered with callbacks to its predecessors. Dr. Chalice's ex-wife Linda is played by Nancy Loomis, the same actress who was Annie in the original film. The pills Chalice prescribes, Thorazine, are the exact medication Dr. Loomis mentioned when transporting Michael in the first Halloween. Even the tagline, "The night no one comes home," is a sly parody of the slogans from the first 2 entries. And if you look closely, the original Halloween even plays briefly on a TV set, meaning Michael does appear, if only as a movie inside the movie. These little threads tie Season of the Witch back into the larger franchise, like ghostly fingerprints left behind from the films that came before it. Halloween 3 remains the strangest chapter in the saga. It tossed aside its masked killer to gamble on an anthology, and in the process it spawned lawsuits, rewrites, abandoned concepts, and some of the weirdest production choices ever made. Fans rejected it at the time, but over the years it's gained a cult following precisely because it dared to be so different. If the franchise had stuck to its anthology plan, the history of horror might look completely different today. Maybe the real curse wasn't in the masks or the jingles, but in the studio's attempt to erase its own monster. Either way, Halloween 3 proves one thing. When the silver shamrock jingle plays, you never change the channel.